Hello everyone and welcome to Golden Nova's First Reacts, where I react first to all the things you want to see reacted to first, as long as I'm the first person you come to react to things first. Doom of Dimension has brought us many archetypes, from interdimensional corporate warlords, to animated statues, to wrestlers fighting for their lives, and now magical musical girls. Folks, Solfachord is back. I fondly remember talking about them as one of the videos that got me my first copyright strike on the channel. Gallivant's a pretty good series, as it turns out. But I don't remember too much of what Solfachord does, aside from them having a pretty interesting gimmick. They cared a lot about who had evens or odds in their pendulum scales. A lot of them seem to have like an inverse relation between their scales and their levels. But aside from that, there are just a bunch of utility cards. I think the most famous Solfachord card is the Link monster that kept pendulum monsters at point or two from having their effects negated, which ended up crossing over with Zark, making it so that its own effect couldn't be negated whenever it was summoned off of one of the trap cards. That was very funny. This does mean that Solfachord's kind of in the lurch, though. There's not anything that it does specifically better than any other pendulum archetype, and with pendulums being on the downturn, there's not a lot of hope for it. Normally, if you see a pendulum in an archetype, it's kind of there to facilitate some kind of gimmick, right? Yugioh has a ritual pendulum monster that allows it to do something as a spell card before transitioning to the field. Nemlyria is specifically a pendulum monster, so it can stick around while something else happens before you can summon it to the field. The closest thing we've had to a modern pendulum archetype is Valiance, and even that plays like a board game. Do Solfachords redeem pendulums? Let's find out. First up, we have Solfachord Solfeggia, a level 2 light fairy pendulum monster with 400 attack and defense, pendulum scale of 9. You can only use the pendulum effect of this card's name once per turn. First pendulum effect: when a monster effect is activated by your opponent on the field and it resolves, if you control a Grand Solfachord monster, which are the Link monsters, you can negate that effect, then destroy this card. Ooh, okay, so it's one of them effect negation cards that don't chain to the actual card. Very powerful. As a monster, you can only use the first and second monster effect of this card's name each once per turn. If you control no monsters, or all monsters you control are Solfachord monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. And when you activate this second effect, you can also tribute this card. During your main phase, you can special summon a Solfachord monster from your hand, except a copy of this card. Or, if you tributed this card at activation, you can special summon that monster from your graveyard or face-up extra deck instead. Okay. So it's not necessarily it's kind of how the Rika cards work. You don't necessarily have to pay the cost, but if you do, you get a little extra bonus. In this case, you're not getting bonus cards, but you're choosing from different zones. And graveyard and face-up extra deck are pretty cool. Hand, maybe not so much. Though, it is a way to summon from the hand that's not pendulum summoning, which means you don't have to... Well, I guess you don't have to do it to the Link arrows if you're pendulum summoning from the hand. It only cares if you pendulum summon from the face-up extra deck. Though, this summons from the face-up extra deck. And I guess you always have to do it, though, right? Huh. I forget that part of the pendulum ruling, I'm going to be honest. Do you have to do that if you're summoning? Does it check if it's a pendulum monster or if you're doing pendulum summoning? Much to consider. Never mind that, let's go ahead and talk about Solfachord Primoria, a level 1 Earth Fairy pendulum monster, 0 attack, 400 defense, pendulum scale of 0. That's super important because Cutia has been likewise stuck in the extra deck. You have to use other effects to pop her out of the face-up extra deck into your hand to summon her again, because that's a level 1 monster, and the scales only went down to 1. Now we have a 0. When you pendulum summon a monster, this is the first effect on here, you can target a Solfachord card in your pendulum zone and return it to the hand. Which, considering we need to keep in mind what number our scales are, being able to pop one back into the hand is going to be very important. You'll activate the first and third effect of this card's name each once per turn. If this card is normal summoned or special summoned, you can add a Solfachord card from your deck to your hand. Stratos! Your activated Solfachord card effects cannot be negated while you have Solfachord cards with even and odd pendulum scales in your pendulum zones. A bit redundant with the Link monster, but does mean we don't necessarily have to have the Link monster to keep our Solfachord safe. Notably, this also keeps Solfachord card effects from being negated, not just not just pendulum monsters. So this can keep our spell cards safe and our trap cards safe as well. Third, if you link summon a Solfachord monster, you can add a Solfachord card from your graveyard or face-up extra deck to your hand. That's interesting. So it's not if this card is used as link material, but if you link summon one. So you need to keep this on board. Huh. Okay. Granted, you're supposed to be summoning a bunch of monsters because it's a pendulum deck, so the idea here is that you should have other material, but it's weird. Normally you're using them as material for that. Okay. Last thing here, Solfachord Happiness. Normal spell card. Activate one of these effects, but you can only use each effect of this card's name once per turn. And there's 3 of them, so if you draw 3 Happiness, you can activate it 3 times using a different effect each time. First effect, it discards a card, and if you do, add 2 Solfachord Pendulum monsters with different pendulum scales from your deck to your hand. Then you can special summon Solfachord Pendulum monsters from your hand up to the number of monsters your opponent controls plus 1. During your main phase this turn, you can conduct 1 pendulum summon of a Solfachord monster in addition to your pendulum summon, or any number of them. Or special summon 2 Solfachord cards from your pendulum zone. Okay. So, first effect, unfortunately, is an Ash Magnet for sure. Tacking that onto the add from deck to hand is pretty risky, but in response, you do get to replace the spell card and the discard with a complete pendulum scale. But then you also get to dump cards out of your hand too. At least one, because if they have none, you get to summon one out of your hand, which that's pretty, like, you'll have them in your hand. I guess it's not necessarily like I have a complete pendulum scale and then I'll summon before I get them set. We could just summon what we grab and just utilize those. And then if we're going second and our opponent has like 2 or 3 monsters, we can summon a huge board of Solfachords and go ham on that if the card itself is allowed to resolve. Which, because of the discard, I don't know if that board has any negation. I'm firing this. This is either this is going to stop us in our tracks, or Happiness becomes the greatest bait to negates on the planet, and then you can just push through any other effect. The additional pendulum summon is nice. And the summoning from the pendulum zones is also pretty good. In case we already have the Solfachords, we can just put them in the scales and then play this and then get them onto the board without having to worry about any other nonsense. Yeah. I think the best thing about this is that it doesn't apply any kind of summon restriction, so you do have full access to any extra deck nonsense that you would want or need to help make the deck function, though as someone who has not picked up Solfachord at all, I could not tell you exactly what the optimum searches for any of these might be. I'm going to super need everyone's help on that one. If you are a dyed-in-the-wool Solfachord player, if you know the combos, if you are here for the musical gals, let me know down below, because I'm completely lost here. Yeah, I think that about does it. Combos, optimal plays. I wish I could end this on a more enthusiastic thing. I'm not upset to see more support for Solfachords. It's a nifty pendulum deck, and I think it does the best job or a pretty good job, I should say, of focusing on its mechanics and flavor over just being another busted summon a bunch of monsters kind of deck. But that unfortunately means the trade-off is it's not always the most competitively viable or even rogue playable kind of deck. And looking at these, I don't think this is going to do anything to put it back into playable contention. These cards seem fun, but they don't seem to do anything that makes the deck comparable to other meta strategies. But once again, I'm not someone who thinks that every card necessarily has to be meta viable to be worth releasing. Sometimes you just add cards in to be happy that your deck does more things than it used to be able to do beforehand. I think that's what's going to happen here. And of course, if I am wrong, then we will be having a meta that includes the magical girls that have even tinier, even more magical girls than them focus entirely around music, and I can't complain too much about that one. So, once again, let me know your thoughts down below. What do you plan to do with them if you're a pilot, and what pendulum nonsense can these be teched into or can steal from this to enhance their game plan? And until the next time Konami drops some juicy spoilers, I will see all of you next time. Bye-bye. Today's episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales that even come with their own lore, and save 5% on your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. It was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, Upstairs Media, and Simic Toadstool, Nebula Navigators, 3rd Dynasty, 50 Gigabytes, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Battle Axe, Kane Senpai, Charlie Mercury, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Dr. Reaper, Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Great Big Pillock, Groog, Hair Bear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Marion James E. Picata, Meme King, Millennia Asta, Muse Clark, Neon Yaminair, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Bat Boos, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sonic 21 Blast, The Critic of Innocence, Thievery Coast, and The Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders Ally Vatnia, Animasta, Anthorak, A Random Pup, Blaze Rider, Blitzwolf, Chaz Ghost, Christopher Fuss, again, Chris B, Cool Trainer Dark, Divine Dragon Felgrin 4123, Dr. Reaper RIP, again, Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Herbal D, Inblink, Kale the Dragon, Lobomaru 02, Manga Pages, Martin Moore 2468, Natiel Lee Alexander, Nitromo, Not Al Gore, Nyx, Obsidian, Pombo, Rhyme Kairos, Shizuka Nijimura, Sir Knight JCB, Sphilia, Stephen Huntsman, Stephen Williamson, The Legendary Raven, The Phantom Knights of Shitted Pants, The Queen of Time, The Gene, Tiger X2476, Tristan O'Meara and Zaldreka, as well as the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you would check out the link to my Patreon down in the description, or consider joining as a YouTube member.